Awesome. Okay, so thank you so much again, Ms. Hall, for being here. And thank you, students, for joining us. We are going to get started on our financial aid night. So, Ms. Hall, take it away.
All right, thank you so much. So tonight we're just going to be talking about your financial aid offer, or you might hear financial award. And I really want to just talk to you about what does my offer mean, or what does your offer mean? So here are some of the topics that are going to be covered this evening. So we're really going to talk about your financial aid forms. So what financial aid forms are needed for colleges. You filed your FAFSA, now what? Special circumstances, funds that are considered, and again, like I said, just understanding your financial aid offer. So here's some information about financial forms needed for colleges. So of course, now that you're almost done with senior year, I can't believe it. So you're almost at the end. So one of the things that we've talked about since about October is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. So hopefully on or at sometime after October 1 of this year, you and your family complete the FAFSA. And just to remind you, the reason that you complete the FAFSA is if you want to be considered for federal state grants, federal loans, federal work study. And it's kind of the catalyst to getting the ball, rolling, so we can get to figure out what your financial aid offer might entail. So, so you're being considered for federal state grants, federal loans, federal work study. Some institutions may also use the FAFSA or the free application for federal student aid to determine eligibility for institutional money. So just below that, just slightly, you're going to see some websites to help you get to your FAFSA if you haven't done it already and need to do it. So you'll see FAFSA.gov, or you can go to studentaid.gov/FAFSA. Now, just so that you know that FAFSA is now mobile and tablet friendly. So if you prefer to do it on a mobile device or tablet, you can go to your Google Play Store or your Apple Store, and you can search for My Student Aid. So that's an icon or app that you would want to utilize. Now, there's also another form that colleges may need or ask for, and it's the College Scholarship Service Profile, or you might hear your advisor or your school counselor refer to it as the CSS profile. Now, the CSS profile is a document that you can access through College Board. So College Board, you're familiar with that, hopefully, if you have done the SAT. So collegeboard.org is the place that you can find out more information. Of course, the college's financial aid page, you can find out, exactly what they need and information that way as well. The third bullet point down, you'll notice that I'm talking about other institutional applications. So of course, it doesn't matter what school you're going to, whether it's in North Carolina, outside of North Carolina, whether it's a four-year school or community college, you need to do the FAFSA, okay? And the other two options are based upon the institution, what they require. Now, some institutions do not necessarily use the CSS profile, but they may have their own institutional application that they want you to complete. So one of the takeaways I want you guys to have is know the financial aid process for the school or schools that you're considering right now. So the next thing I want to just talk to you about is, now that you filed your FAFSA, what's next, or what now? So after you filed your FAFSA, or if you haven't done your FAFSA yet, but plan to do it sometime in the foreseeable future, what to expect after you've done that. So number one, you're going to respond to all the questions from the campus financial aid office. And you want to make sure you're doing that as soon as you can. So make sure you're doing that in a timely manner, because there's some things that might be going on, like there might be verification that needs to happen. So if you find out once you've done your FAFSA and you hear from the institution saying you've been selected for verification, it does not mean that you've done anything incorrect. But what it does mean is that some of the information that was provided on the FAFSA or the free application for federal student aid needs to be verified. And it could be that schools may even use a third-party servicer. Now, if they are using a third party, that means that, the college is going to definitely let you know, and you still need to get that information in as soon as you can so they can continue to process your aid award. So if you do not get that information in, that means that your financial aid is kind of on hold, because they're waiting for some additional information. And then they're going to share information with you that might ask for some other forms. So just be on the lookout for that. So of course, you're going to receive your financial aid award notification. And of course, we're going to talk about this evening, how to expect that. So some schools, for their incoming freshmen, it could be a letter. That's kind of old school now. It could be that the school is communicating. When I say school tonight, I'm talking about the financial aid office, is communicating with you through email. It could be that they're using some type of portal, whatever they call their portal system. The third thing is you're going to compare your aid packages from each college. And I am going to give you a tool that you can utilize on cfnc.org to help you do that. So we'll talk about that kind of at the end of my time with you. And step 4, complete all steps necessary to secure your offered aid that you intend to accept. And the reason I say intend to accept is because, when you receive your financial aid offer, it's going to tell you all the things you're eligible for. And so you may or may not want to accept everything that's listed. So, but you need to let them know what you do plan to accept and what things that you're not going to be accepting. Now, financial aid change forms will be available, and this is important. So let's say that you've done your FAFSA, early fall, or you may have recently done your FAFSA, but you're not going to college until when? Until what? The fall, right? So lots of things can happen or change between the time that you've completed your FAFSA and your financial aid forms to the time that you're actually going to be on campus attending. So sometimes there may be some special circumstances. Okay, so it could be maybe there's been a death that's happened. It could be disability. Maybe your parents have gotten divorced or separated. That is a common thing that we hear when we're going through the financial aid process. It may be loss of employment. So maybe mom or dad has lost their job. And sometimes we have students or families that have unusual medical expenses. And so on the FAFSA form, it's already asking you everything that they need to know from that perspective. But there are things that have happened or transpired since you've done the form and the college needs to know. So at that point, you're communicating directly with the financial aid office, and they may have you to complete a special circumstance, or they may call it a special conditions form that you'll need to do for them. And not that they don't believe what you're telling them, but they could ask you for some additional documents, some supporting documentation to prove whatever you're telling them. They use all that information and they use what we call professional judgment. So they're looking at your information case by case to make a determination as to how that's going to impact your financial aid. So it's very important that you communicate. So I know sometimes you may not be sure exactly, what to say or how to say it, but it's important that you get that information out, because if they don't receive that, they don't know that your circumstances have changed. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your FAFSA. And once you've completed FAFSA, you're going to get this confirmation page. All right, so basically here, one of the things that we're hoping to find or figure out is once you've done your FAFSA, your EFC, your expected family contribution number. So of course, this is just for example, so this is not a live FAFSA application, but you will have some sort of information here. And I just want to make sure that you're seeing that. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes as we get through the presentation why that EFC is important or how it's being used. So just remember, EFC, expected family contribution, that you receive from completing your FAFSA. Now remember, I told you when you're completing your FAFSA, you're automatically being considered for certain types of funds. So what funds are you being considered for? So we talked about federal and state grants, loans, work study, and schools can also use that information to consider you for institutional money. So when we're talking about federal aid, we're talking about things like the Pell Grant, the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. It could be student and parent loans. So of course, loans, that would be money that you're receiving with the understanding that at some point you're going to have to repay that, right? So those are federal programs. And then we look at, what's for North Carolina, what's for our state here. So when you complete the FAFSA form, you're automatically being considered for the NC Education Lottery Scholarship, and that's for public institutions. And so you're probably saying, well, Ms. Hall, what are you talking about? So you have to be attending a public institution. So that will be either a UNC school, or when I say public institution, we're talking about a community college. And then you'll see the community college grant. So of course, in order to be considered for that, you have to have complete your FAFSA. You have to be attending a community college. You have to have, financial need. So those are some things you have to be enrolled at least half time. So when you hear some of these awards, those are some of the criteria. But this one specifically is for a community college. So one of the 58 community colleges that we have in North Carolina. So you also see the UNC need-based grant. So UNC need-based grant, of course, same criteria I just mentioned, and with the exception, you have to be attending a UNC school. And then, of course, you'll see the NC need-based scholarship. So when we talk about NC need-based scholarship, then, of course, this is going to be if you're attending a private institution in North Carolina. So I want to keep saying North Carolina so that you understand these are funds for our state. And then as we talk about institutions, of course, what you might receive from the school, that can vary based upon the institution that you're considering. So let's just talk a little bit about loans. I know you're anxious to get to information about your financial aid award, but I want to make sure that you understand this part. So when we're talking about loans, so we're talking about the federal direct loans that are out there. There are loans that you can take out for yourself, and there are loans that your parents can take out for you as a dependent student. So when you complete the FAFSA, there's a whole section that you and your parents are reviewed and indicated if you can answer any of those questions to determine whether you're dependent or independent. So just in case you've forgotten, they want to know, are you at least 24? Are you married? You have dependents of your own that you provide more than half the support for. So there were several questions like that. And if you can answer any of those questions as, yes, then for financial purposes, that made you dependent. So that means everything in that section you answered was no, and meaning your parents' information is required. So now, if you're a first-year undergraduate student, this is kind of giving you an idea of how much money you could possibly get. And when you hear subsidized loan, of course, that's a need-based loan in which the federal government is paying the interest as long as you're in school and during your grace period. And if you see unsubsidized, the federal government is not paying the interest on that particular loan. So you have the option to make interest payments as it's accumulating, or you can capitalize on the interest. So that's all the interest you haven't been paying for 2 years or 4 years or however long, it's going to be added on to your principal loan amount once you go into repayment. So as a first-year student, need-based loan, you could possibly be eligible for $3,500. And then of course, if you see on your award notification it says unsubsidized, then of course you could be possibly eligible for additional $2,000. So the total annual limit could be as much as $5,500. And then as you age up, as you're moving along your college process, your classification changes, you can see the amount that you would be eligible for as a second-year undergraduate student, third and fourth, and so forth. And so at the bottom of my screen, I'm just letting you know there are aggregate limits. So there are maximum amounts that you can borrow as an undergraduate dependent student. And so make sure you're paying attention to how much you've borrowed over time. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Now, let's talk a little bit about direct versus indirect college costs. So yeah, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand or anything this evening to find out if you know college costs. But one of the things I want to challenge you guys to do, or one of your takeaways this evening, I hope, is finding out exactly how much it's going to cost you to attend a college or university of your choice, okay? So when we're talking about college, and you hear me say direct costs, those are expenses that are going to be paid directly to the college or university, okay? So we're talking about things like tuition, fees, room and board, or you guys may say room and meals, all right? And then indirect costs are things that you're not paying directly to the institution, but they're still impacting the college experience. So we're talking about books and supplies. You might want those things, right? Transportation, you might have some personal or miscellaneous expenditures. This might even include maybe some of your health insurance. I'm giving you a formula at the bottom of my screen. So it's telling you the direct costs that you may have, so you might get a bill for from the college or university, plus indirect costs equal the cost of attendance. And so that's going to be your budget. So direct costs plus indirect costs equal the cost of attendance, which is the budget that college uses. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So budget, of course, that might vary, depending on the categories of your enrollment. So when you were doing your information for your FAFSA, and maybe when you're completing documents for the institution, they're trying to find out if you're going to be an on-campus student. So there may be a certain budget for on-campus students. It could be that if you're off-campus student, there might be a certain budget. They also are trying to find out if you're in-state or out-of-state. So hopefully you guys have heard the term RDS, right? Residency Determination Service. So hopefully you completed that. So you can be considered for in-state tuition, so without that, then you're classified as an out-of-state student. So that's very important when we talk about college costs. Now, remember we talked about EFC, and I just talked to you about cost of attendance. So wanted to break that down for you just so that we could get to this point. So your cost of attendance, at whatever school you're going to, less your EFC. Remember on the confirmation page for your FAFSA, you learned about EFC. So cost of attendance less your EFC tells you the eligibility that you have for need-based funds at any school. So again, cost of attendance minus EFC tells you if you have eligibility for need-based funds at any institution. Now, your cost of attendance will change from school to school that you're considering. Your EFC does not change. Now, it can change from year to year, but within that same, calendar year, your EFC is going to be the same. So if your cost of attendance changes, then that means that your eligibility for need-based funds can be different from school to school. And I'll show you some examples. So it's not too bad so far, right? You guys still with me? Still out there?
Yeah.
So let's talk. Yeah, good. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit about your award offers. So sometimes, again, I'll tell you, back in the day, we used to say award letters. Now you might hear your financial aid offers or your award offers. The terminology may change. So here on my screen, you're seeing a little bit information as far as costs. You see if you're at home. I didn't mention that before. So an option could be that you're staying at home. You're not going to be on campus. You might be off campus, but you might still be at home with your parents. So you'll see information about tuition and fees. You'll see information about loan fees, books and supplies. You see that information, housing. So on this particular screen, where we're looking at students, you'll see, if you're looking at the left-hand side of my screen, where we're looking at Central Piedmont. And so this was for the 2019-2020 year, just so I can give you an example. You'll notice tuition and fees are the same no matter whether you're at home, on campus, or off campus, right? Loan fees are the same. Doesn't matter, if you're on, off, or at home. But what does change is your housing, okay? So your books and supplies don't change, but housing changes. So if you're at home, there's one, cost. If you're on campus, of course, you stay in a dorm room or suite or apartment or whatever on campus, you'll have a cost that's associated with that. And as we talk about on-campus housing, depending on what type of housing you have, the cost can be different from a dorm room or a suite or an apartment on campus, right? And then off-campus, they have a certain allotment for off-campus living. So, all of these award notifications or award offers, award, letters that we talk about will look a little bit different. So, but I just wanted you to see, some information as far as cost first. And so let's just kind of get into it as far as, some of the costs that you're going to see. So here, before we start looking at the award letters or offers, let me just kind of go over some vocabulary. So let's talk a little bit about the language or the lingo that you're going to see. So one of the things I want to make sure that you understand, you must report other financial aid you expect to receive. So you might see that. And of course, of course, financial aid offices or financial planning offices can make changes after they receive your information. So just be aware of that. So of course, if you decide that you're going to borrow federal loans, so you'll look at your award notification. They may have something listed. Remember, you can accept or decline anything on that award offer. But of course, you would have to complete what we call a master promissory note. And so that master promissory note is let you know that you're agreeing to repay loans, because we talked about loans earlier, and loans have to be repaid under the terms of the agreement. So if you're taking out a loan, one of the things I need for you to understand, you have to be enrolled at least half time, which is at least 6 credit hours. And I know that all of you are going to be enrolled much more than that, because it will take a long time for you to graduate if you're only taking a few classes, right? So I'm sure all of you are going to be enrolled full time. But if you fall below half-time enrollment for a loan, you go into repayment prematurely. So, but as long as you're enrolled at least half-time, you're put in what we call an in-school deferment, meaning that you're not going to have to make payments, right away. As long as you're in school, and then of course they give you a grace period once you graduate, or if you fall below half-time before you have to start repaying. But you have 10 years to repay loans. There's no prepayment penalties, meaning that if you want to pay it off early, you can do that anytime, and there's no penalty to do that. So maybe another time your advisor can invite me back. We can talk a lot more about loans to help you understand the loan process. But you are going to have to go through loan counseling before you receive a loan, so they know you understand your rights and responsibilities. And once you graduate or you exit the institution, of course, you're going to have to go through exit loan counseling. So they make sure you understand your rights and responsibilities. So, but that master promissory note is your agreement. And then, of course, complete student loan interest counseling. We talked about that, or some schools might call it debt management counseling. So that language can change. So you'll do that. And then, of course, your parents might see that a parent loan has been packaged. And what we call parent loans, you might see federal plus loan. So plus means parent loan for undergraduate student, which is what you're going to be. You're going to be an undergraduate student. And that's going to help. That might be necessary to meet the balances due. So as a parent, your parents can borrow up to the full cost of education, less any aid that you might get. Okay. Now, your loan for as a student, if you see that on your award offer, you take out a loan, that means you are responsible as a student or as a scholar. I was telling your advisor earlier, I love the word scholar. So as a scholar, you are responsible for repaying that. Your parents do not co-sign with you. Okay. So mom and dad are not responsible for the federal direct Stafford loan. Okay. If your parents decide to take out a plus loan, parent loan for undergraduate student, that's a loan that your parents are responsible for. So that means that you're not responsible for it as a student, but your parents are responsible, but you're just benefiting from it, right? So, of course, one of the things that happens here for your parents to get that loan is it's based upon credit worthiness. So there is a credit check done for parents. So just want to make sure that you guys understand that. Now, as I'm going along, if you have a question and you think that you might forget it, please put it in the chat. I don't want you to forget your question. But so here, here's some additional language that you might see on your award offer. So you want to make sure you read all the enclosed terms and conditions. So there might be some terms and conditions that you have to understand, or that are going to be available for you to get your award. So make sure you read all the terms and conditions that apply to your offer. So you might see something that will say satisfactory academic progress policy. So we call that SAP, S-A-P, satisfactory academic progress. So there's a lot of acronyms that we use in the financial aid world. Or you might see that the financial aid office wants you to read their withdrawal policy. So what happens if you withdraw, okay? And then there may be other important financial aid and campus policies that you need to read. So I know sometimes as scholars, we get a lot of paperwork that we have to complete, and we're skimming it, and we're kind of reading it, but we're kind of not reading everything this is a time where it's very important that you read everything that that the campus is providing. All right, so here we go. So you'll see information here. So this is an example of a paper award letter, from example. And so, like I said, Mrs. Hall has been around for a long time. And so when I was a student, many, did I say many years ago, we used to get paper award letters. And I do know there are some schools who say they will give a paper award to students who are new to the institution, maybe first-year scholars. So, of course, you want to read whatever they're saying to you initially. And, here you'll see in red, and I'll read this. This is based on the information you included in your FAFSA. Your EFC, or expected family contribution, is. And here, for this particular student, it was $7,740. And then the other piece that I want you to understand is this: we use this number in conjunction with both the direct and indirect cost of attending, the institution. So, earlier when we talked, we talked about what your EFC was, right? We talked quite a bit about, cost of attendance, and so that number is used in conjunction with both the direct costs and indirect costs, and we talked about that, right? So when they're talking about indirect costs and direct costs, they're talking about things like tuition, room and board, books, other expenses. And so that's helping them to determine your eligibility for what? Federal and state awards and institutional grants and scholarships. So I know it took a long time to get to this point, but I wanted to explain all that information so that this information makes sense. So here, under source on the screen, it's telling you all the information or all the types of money you can get to help pay for the college, for one academic year. So you're not billed all at once here. So you'll see that they're breaking up into what? Fall and spring. Although sometimes students or scholars may decide to go to summer school, but right now they're breaking up into fall and spring. So it's saying, okay, there's for LR scholars, for fall you're getting $5,000. For spring you're getting $5,000. So for the year total, $10,000. But we're only concerned about fall right now, so let's look at the $5,000. And then that NC need-based scholarship we talked about for this particular student, they're getting $2,800 for fall, and they'll get $2,800 for spring. So $5,600 total. And then, there's an LR grant in aid, so $4,250 the scholar's getting for fall, and then the same amount for spring, which will give them $8,500. And then they have the LR Highland Award, so $750 for fall, $750 for spring, so a total of $1,500, right? And then here's where we talked about loans, and I hope that you guys understood what I was talking about when we were talking about subsidized and unsubsidized loans and plus loans. So we talked about that a few moments ago. So remember, I said for a first-year undergraduate student, you could get, for subsidized, the maximum amount you could get is $3,500, right? So the student is getting that, but they're breaking it into fall and spring. So $1,750 for fall, $1,750 for spring. So $3,500 total. And then if you look up on my screen just a little bit, so let's go over to the right side. You'll see federal direct unsubsidized loan. So remember, students might get an additional $2,000. You might get that. But this is the part that's not based on need. So that student got the full $2,000, so half in fall, half in spring. Then the plus loan, who's that for? Remember we talked about plus, parent loan for undergraduate student. So remember that loan is based upon what? Credit worthiness for your parents, right? But you're benefiting. So this student received $5,775 for fall, $5,775 for what? Spring. So total $11,550. So if you look at the total awards received, so for fall, which is the term that we're going to start off with, that student's going to get $21,325, right? And then, of course, for the next semester, they're receiving the same amount. And then total, if we look at fall and spring together, the amount of money they can get total would be $42,650. So just, wanting to make sure that you understand that. And then, you're going to see some other information. So just below that, it says, our records show that you plan to live where? This student is going to live on campus. So, and it's going to tell them what their charges will include. So they're telling them about tuition, how much it's going to be for tuition. So it's going to be $15,461 per semester. And room and board. So remember, we talked about room and board. So that's what? That's your dorm room as well as what? So your dorm room and board is what? Meals, right? So that's $5,370 per semester. And so how much is it for one semester? So if we do the total, $20,831 per semester. And then, of course, if you look, I'm also giving you a grand total, and it's telling you how much it is going to be for the year. So I'm going to pause just for a minute so that can kind of, sink in just a little bit. All right, so letting that sink in just for a little bit. Now, it's also going to give you a little bit more information. So I had to adjust my lighting just a little bit. The time frame, our day is a little bit longer, but the light is getting kind of dim outside. Okay, so let that sink in for just a few minutes. So it's also giving you some other information. So I have a red box, and it says you are eligible to receive $2,000 through our federal work study program. Now, I did not talk to you about work study, so let's just pause and let me talk to you about work study. So, obviously, you hear the word work, right? So federal work study programs allow students or scholars to work no more than 15 to 20 hours a week. So you're working on campus, or you could be working in a community service setting. A lot of times you're paid minimum wage, sometimes you pay a little bit more, right? So examples of jobs that you might work on campus: you could work for Housing and Resident Life. You could be someone who's a tour guide for campus. I just saw one of my colleges, talking about that. You could work in the library. Could be there's a convenience store on campus. You could work for the student union. There are all kinds of jobs on campus, right? So now it's telling them that the money can be earned by attaining an on-campus job and will be paid to students bi-weekly. Okay. So based on the hours that they're working. So just making sure you're reading everything that they're offering. Okay. So then it's going to give you a little bit more information. Okay. So it's going to say, since you're eligible for the above awards, they will automatically be applied to your account unless you apply with any change or any changes. And so it's telling you changes may be made by striking through the award you wish to decline or decrease. Okay. So like I said, they're saying that you can either accept or you can decline anything that's offered in this example right here. And then it says some of your awards may require additional information. So if you look in the red box here, it says the items we still need are. So on this particular example, they still need the student's promissory note. Or remember, we talked about promissory note earlier. We called it MPN, Master Promissory Note. They still need the parent's loan promissory note. So if the parent decides they want that loan, they need a promissory note. They also are asking for a plus loan request, a copy of the student's driver's license. So there's certain things that they're asking for. Okay, so make sure that you're paying attention to that. Now, as you're receiving award notifications, what I recommend that you do is, or if you have well, I don't say, when you receive your award offers, if you have any questions, I recommend that you talk to the financial aid office. You can ask them anything that you want. You can tell them you don't understand something, but you want to make sure you understand what's being presented. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Now, I'm not going to go over every single thing on this one like I did the other one, but all the information is pretty similar. So here, for this one, you'll see that your award will be based upon enrollment, so credit hours. So you'll see that second line or second arrow on my screen is talking about your award is based on a 12 credit hour enrollment. So remember, a lot of the times, some of the awards may say that you have to be enrolled, at least full time, or some of them may say that you have to be enrolled at least half time. So pay attention to that. Remember, we talked about SAP, satisfactory academic progress, right? So generally, the college wants to know that you're maintaining a certain GPA or grade point average. So you guys are familiar with that by being, in high school. You know about GPA. So here, 2.0 GPA or higher to maintain that award. So you'll see that the third arrow, I'm pointing down, telling you a little bit about what their SAP policy is. And a lot of times, if you're not sure what it is, there's, you can go to the college's website and they're going to outline what do they mean when they say SAP policy. And then the last thing I'm pointing to, that fourth arrow, it says refunds. So check versus deposit. So often given after classes, have begun. So if you get a refund, guys, let me just talk about, I'm kind of going to go off on a tangent just for 1 minute. So I hope it's okay, Ms. Lester. I promise not to get too much off track.
Go for it.
Okay, so when I was a student, remember Ms. Hall was a student years ago, but when I was a student, I would hear other students on campus waiting to receive a refund because they had other plans that weren't necessarily academic and they wanted to use a refund check for that. When I was a student, one of the things that my parents always told me is if I was due for a refund, that I should, make sure I put that money aside because you never know what types of unexpected expenses may come up. So what I want to tell you is that refund, Ms. Lester might want to say something too. Refund doesn't mean that you should have free money just spent just any way that you want. You really need to put that money aside, especially if you're not sure down the road, you might have, a semester or something where you're a little bit short on funds. And if you have that money that was left over, that might help you, especially if you decide to go to summer school. So I don't know if you want to share something or how you think, what your thoughts or experiences are, Ms. Lester. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally echo everything you're saying. Just because you get money back does not mean that you can just go and take that just for yourself. Like you can just put it in your pocket and go buy a lot of ice cream or something. That money was intended to pay your schooling. And typically, if the way you get a refund is you potentially have more scholarships than and then you get a refund because your scholarships were more than you needed, right? And so you get that money back, and that's your money that you get to put into a savings account. You're gonna have other expenses down the road after you're done with college. If you have taken out loans, you will have to pay those back. So a refund could, in a way, help pay for things later down the road. So I totally echo what you're saying. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. So make sure you know the conditions of your award. So make sure you're going through that information. And like I said, it might seem like a lot of reading, and I understand, but take the time to read it because it could be something that you didn't pay attention to that might impact you, differently or adversely in the future. So make sure you read everything. So you'll see here on my screen, under that second, right before you get to that second arrow, right above that, it says conditions of this award. So make sure you're reading. So here's some examples or an example of, accessing electronic award letters or notifications. So you can see their portal, and it's going to pretty much give you the same information. So it's going to tell you about how you need to sign in or log in. It might have some quick links. It's going to tell you just all the pertinent information. And, so you'll see your financial aid information here. And so that's the tab that you want to, click on. You want to click on where it says financial aid, or, however the college, I don't know, some of the colleges I work with, they call them the Office of Financial Planning, or, but anyway, financial is going to be in there somewhere. And so once you get there, you want to click on wherever it says your award information. And it's going to tell you all the different things that you're eligible to receive. So make sure you go through that information. So this is just another example. So it could be a letter, it could be email, it could be, going through that college's portal.
And I'm just going to chime in right there, because you guys are going to get information so differently from each of your colleges and community colleges. And so be watching whatever email you put for the community college, or for whatever the college, whatever communication avenue you provided them, make sure that you're checking that. So your emails, your mail, it can come in the mail too. It could be on your student portal, which you'll get information for creating a student portal potentially through your email. So in order for you to access this stuff, you've got to be aware of where that information would be. So be sure that you're checking all the avenues of communication from that college or community college, so that you don't miss out on getting this information pretty soon. So
exactly. Thanks. Exactly. And here's just another, this is another example of how you might see it. So don't get, nervous about, different offers or formats. Basically, the information is going to be the same. It just might be listed a different way. It might look a little bit different. Now here, I do want to point out something where, we did say that you have to let the school know what you plan to accept. So here for this one, it'll say federal Pell Grant. It tells you how much was offered. So this was for the 2019-2020 year. They were offered $6,195, and the student or scholar accepted the whole amount. Same thing for the USC need-based award or grant. They accepted everything that was offered. And then, of course, some merit-based awards, but notice it'll say accepted or declined. So this student has the option to decline anything that's offered here. So they can say accepted or decline. Okay, so I'm just going to be a devil's advocate for just a minute. So remember we talked about loans. So this student has been offered $3,500. But what if I don't need all of that? Maybe I received another outside scholarship or something that I didn't know about, and I didn't need all of that, and maybe now I only need $1,000. So you can indicate how much that you want to accept. So it can be for a lesser amount. So I just want to point that out. Now, here's just some other examples. So you might be, comparing schools. So this is, where you might have a campus A, B, or C. And one of the things I taught you about, remember we did that formula where I said cost of attendance minus EFC tells you your financial need, okay, eligibility. So campus A is $19,000. So when they complete the FAFSA, we found out, hey, your EFC is $8,000, right? So remember, EFC, whatever that number that comes back, is going to be the same for each school. So across the board for campus A, B, and C, you'll see the EFC is the same as $8,000. But the amount of the college is different, so the need is going to be different. So you'll see for campus A, $19,000. EFC was $8,000, so financial need, $11,000. For campus B, it cost $40,000. Their EFC was $8,000. So their need is $32,000, right? Campus C, $65,000 is the cost of attendance. EFC is $8,000. So their financial need is $57,000. Now, the college is going to work to meet whatever that need is. And so you'll see below that, it's going to tell you for each campus, it's going to tell you how much aid that they are going to be offered, right? So we talked about that. So it's going to tell you for each one. For sake of time, I won't go through all of them, but it's going to tell you that for campus A, the student is, merit aid, $2,500. For institution and or need-based grant, $1,500. They're being offered $2,000 for work study. As far as loans, the student's getting $5,500. So remember, as a first-year undergraduate student, the max that they can get that's in subsidized money is, or the need-based loan is $5,500. And then so the total aid, is what? Oh, it's going to be $11,500, and then to be paid, would be $7,500. So then it tells you the total excluding student loans. So that kind of gives you an idea of what happens here if we're looking at examples of financial aid awards. So I won't spend too much time here, but I just wanted to show you that because I know we're getting really close to our time, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So how to pay the balance due. So how do you pay whatever the balance is due? So if there is a balance that's due, of course, you can pay out of pocket. So, if you have money in another account or whatever, you can certainly do that. Some people save for college and they have money set aside. And so they can use maybe like something like a 529 plan. If you have a balance due or amount to be paid, of course, some colleges will offer you an installment payment plan, or they might call it a college payment plan. So this is where you usually have to pay an enrollment fee to participate in the college payment plan. And but it's interest free, okay? And so they will tell you how many payment plans they have available. And you choose the one, that's going to, the one that is going to be most advantageous for you or that you can afford. So what I will say to you, if you and your family do choose a college payment plan, start at the beginning, because if you start a payment plan after it has already started and you didn't participate, then you kind of have to play catch up. So, but most colleges will have some type of a plan. So even if you think you're not going to need it, just know that it exists in case you do, right? Okay, so you just pay smaller increments instead of having to pay all of it at one time. And then there are some private student loans out there. We didn't really talk about loans, but what I do want to say about loans is to borrow responsibly. That means don't borrow any more than you absolutely have to without sacrificing the quality of your education. Usually you want to seek out federal loans first, because a lot of times you might get the best interest rate. And of course, you want to see what you can qualify for in your name first as a student. Again, because a lot of times students get the best rates. Before you start thinking about private loans, I want you to dig real deep, and I want you to think about your career choice, and I want you to figure out, are you just going to school for 2 years or 4 years? Are you thinking about graduate studies down the road? So what is that thought process like? So I don't want you to borrow a whole lot of money in undergraduate school or studies, knowing that you may have to go to graduate school down the road. And even if you're not going to graduate school and you're just going to, go to school for 2 years or 4 years, I still don't want you to get bogged out on a lot of loan indebtedness. So you always want to seek out what? Scholarships and grants first, because that's gift aid. That's free money that you don't have to repay, right? So private loans allow you and or your parents to borrow above and beyond what you're eligible for in federal dollars. So just be very careful when you're thinking about that, because like I said, you want to get as much free money as you can first. But with private loans, a lot of times they're going to be based upon credit worthiness. So as a student, if you need additional funding or if you need more money, a lot of times you're going to have a co-signer or surety, because you're probably not going to be a standing alone. You probably don't even have really any credit right now. So you might have to get your parent to co-sign. So just make sure you do your homework first. So that's what I want to say about private loans. And then, of course, didn't really talk about CFNC this evening, but I do want to leave you with this. CFNC is an amazing website. We have lots of information to help you with planning, applying, and paying for college. So what you're seeing here is information on our website that we have to help you. And so here's some information in our Pay for College section. And then, of course, you can go to our college financing, or I guess you say college financing resources, and then we have some financial aid calculators. So really, there are 7 essential financial aid calculators that we make available. And so there's several. I will tell you, all of them are amazing, but the ones that you probably want to look at right now, based upon where you are, is we do have what we call Compare Financial Aid Calculator. There's a Smart Borrower Calculator. So if you're planning to borrow, the smallest payment that you can ever have is about $50. Okay, so that's the smallest payment that you can usually have. But as you borrow more, if you borrow more, that payment amount can go up. So, but there's a Smart Borrower Calculator, and I like Smart Borrower Calculator or that calculator, because also you need to think about what your job is. So guys, if you haven't paid any attention, or you haven't looked at your career, and you don't know how much you would get for your entry-level salary, you might want to take a look at that. Because, of course, you want to borrow smart, and you want to think about all the different types of expenses you might have in the future to be able to take care of yourself. And then there's a student loan comparison calculator out there that you might even want to look at. So I do have an example. I know I didn't have time to show all of these, but you can go to our website, cfnc.org, and you can look at any of these calculators that we have. But I do want to spotlight one. So here is a great comparison tool. And so you'll see, first of all, it's going to, ask you where you plan to live. So you can put in that information. You can put in your colleges. So I don't know about Miss Lester, but I'm sure she probably would co-sign on this for me or with me, is that, typically we want students in the senior year to have at least 3 or 4 serious colleges that they're considering. So here you'll see you can put in name of college 1, 2, 3, and 4 as we work on this comparison. Then as far as the cost of attendance, this is where you can plug in some numbers. You can put tuition and fees for all 4 of those schools. You can put room and board for all 4 of those schools. Books and supplies, you can put in all that information. Travel, personal expenses. You can put in all that information. So that's your cost of attendance or your budget, right? And then we'll go over to where it says financial aid. So if you look at the right-hand side of my screen, it's giving some great information. So gift aid, remember we talked about gift aid. That's free money, money that you do not have to repay. So that's grants and scholarships. So for school 1, 2, 3, and 4, whatever name you have associated with those schools, you will put in whatever they're offering. Remember, on the award notifications, we talked about what they're offering, right? Other gift aid, you can put that down. And then self-help aid. So self-help aid would be things that we talked about as far as your work study programs, your loans, that information. For all of those schools, you can plug in whatever they're offering you. And then, you can kind of see, what's going to be the best choice or what's going to be most advantageous for you, okay? So sometimes it's hard to compare schools when you have 4 or 5, however many award offers in front of you. But if you put all the information on one page, then it makes sense, right? Then, the writing's on the wall, right? So last thoughts here. Here's some useful free college financial planning sites. So we already talked about studentaid.gov. I told you about the app for My Student Aid if you want to do that on your phone or your tablet or whatever device that you prefer. It's really a preference. CFNC.org. We talked about collegeboard.org. If you're interested in or need a private loan, we have ncassist.org. And then, of course, check out your individual college websites that you're interested in. Make sure you're looking at their financial aid pages to see, what are some of the scholarships that you can be considered for. What forms do they say that you need to complete to be considered for financial aid? So those are the things that you're looking for. So let me just back up. Sorry about that. So make sure you connect with CFNC. We are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. It just depends on, however you flow. But definitely, check us out. And then I am your CFNC regional representative. Again, I'm Takeila, And if you want to follow me, I'm on Facebook and Instagram or Instagram just about every day. Except on the weekends, Mrs. Hall does take a little bit of break on social media. So it's just Takeila at CFNC. You can find me that way, and you can follow me and see what I'm up to, what we're talking about to get you career and college ready. Now, if you have any questions, I'm going to pause here, and I'm actually going to stop my share so that I can, see you guys a little bit and see if there's anything in the chat. But if you have any questions, here's our toll-free number, 866-866-CFNC. So we do have call center associates that can talk to you, or you can definitely visit our website at cfnc.org. So I'm going to pause right here. I think I'm at the top of the hour. So I do want to allow just a few minutes, if it's okay with Ms. Lester, to see what questions or comments that you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Takeila. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording so you guys can ask whatever questions you